Ben Uyeda from Homemade Modern, and I'm going to be answering some questions from the Core 77 audience. Homemade Modern is a design studio where we publish ideas for how to make affordable modern pieces of furniture. So now we'll get to the questions. This one's from a guy named Gavin. He asks, "You're the only guy I follow who's fully kitted out with just Ryobi tools. Are you sponsored by Ryobi, or do you just really like their tools?" Now, I am sponsored by Ryobi, and yes, I do really like their tools. The reason why I reached out to them for sponsorship is because I had always used their tools and had really great success with them. I also like that they're a very affordably priced entry-level tool, because I'm not trying to make the fanciest, craziest piece of cabinetry that I can. I'm not a professional woodworker. I'm a designer, and for me, I want to pick tools that I think are going to be dependable, reliable, affordable, and readily available so that I can help other people sort of figure out how to design and make their first project. And for me, I think Ryobi tools are the best at doing this. Next up is a question from somebody with the username HomeJelly. And they ask, what's your favorite, most practical, and useful DIY tool and why? For me, it's a combination of two tools. It would be a circular saw and a cordless drill. With those two tools, and I recommend the Ryobi ones because you can get a kit where they actually exchange and use the same batteries. With those two tools, you can make most of the projects that I post on Homemade Modern. Now, an orbital sander would make it a little bit easier for doing the sanding and things like that, but in a pinch, you can still do it with hand sandpaper. So I'd say those two power tools, a circular saw and a drill, would be my two favorite. The next question is by someone named Sane from the Core 77 discussion boards. And they ask, what is your thought on creating content showing how to recreate someone else's design, or in parentheses, heavily inspired by? I realize that creating content is in itself difficult. So making the video is the content per se, but not necessarily the design. But there have been numerous videos showing how to create a Greg Klassen, a George Nelson, or a Nakashima, etc. inspired piece. These videos aren't selling the piece, but they are monetizing the intellectual property. What are your thoughts on this topic as a design and architecture business owner? So, this is a really hot topic in the YouTube and making space. The question of whether or not something is stealing IP by recreating a design, or whether or not it's just following inspiration. Now, I think there's two ways to think about this. One is ethically, and the other one is legally. Let's start with the legal thing because that is something that is more objective. So from a legal standpoint, I would say that there are legal ways of protecting these things. So if somebody feels their design is infringed upon to the point where it's hurting their business, they have the ability to go and file a lawsuit and take legal action. Now, if they choose not to do that, it might be for a number of reasons. It might be because it's not worth it or because they're not making enough money. I know that many of my designs are being copied or leading to inspiration, depending on how you want to phrase it, by a lot of other, not just other content producers, but people that are actually building and selling the designs or building and selling designs that were inspired or created as a derivative of the things that I produce. For me individually, and I only speak for myself here, I'm totally okay with that. But I'm okay with it because my business model accounts for that. When I started this business, I wanted to have a business where I didn't have to protect my ideas. I wanted a business model where I was incentivized to share the secrets, to share everything that I know. And what I really like about that is that I don't have to worry. I never feel like they're taking this from me or they're taking this from me. I can just be like, here's my ideas. And if people take them, it's actually really good for my business model because then I go to my sponsors and say, oh wow, not only are individuals downloading these designs or watching these videos and then taking action, people are actually not just taking actions for themselves, but taking them actually to make money for themselves. And so that just shows more of my influence. But that works for me, so I'm never going to tell anyone else how to feel about their work being stolen. That being said, there's 7 billion people in this world. A lot of them have power tools, a lot of them make stuff. And a lot of the times when I hear people saying that this was stolen or this is too much of a ripoff, I think they're often giving themselves a little too much credit for things. So it's up to the individual for how they feel about it. If they're really mad or if they're upset or they feel they were wronged, take legal action. But just whining and complaining about it but not taking action, to me, waste of time. Next question, also from the Core 77 discussion board, is how does video limit or influence your creative ability? Do you skip projects that won't make a good video, or do you mold your creative explorations to become video friendly? Have you been doing this long enough that everything revolves around creating content, so most of your ideas seem to be in that space regardless of whether or not you wanted them to be? For example, you have access to the Autodesk build space and a giant 5-axis CNC. Will we ever see something with that, or does your commitment to your audience make it difficult to explore that? Interesting question. Well, first of all, no, I don't think video limits creativity. I think creativity is in the service of achieving objectives. I don't think of creativity as this thing, well, I can't be creative if I have these constraints. I don't think that's creative. I think that's just self-indulgent pursuits of things that might be visual. For me, the exact purpose of creativity is to achieve and accomplish certain objectives, no matter how difficult the circumstances are. So no, there's plenty of things that I make and design that I don't make a video of. You just don't see them. And there's plenty of things that I make and design for video content that I think, yeah, that's not the best fit, but I still wanted to do it. So ultimately, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. So that's the first step, is if I'm excited about the project, I'm going to do it, even though I know that some things I'm excited about aren't going to translate to the audience as well as others. As for the 5-axis CNC machine and whether or not that makes for great video content, I think it really depends. I've had some CNC projects do incredibly well because they were so visually spectacular. What I don't think does really well is when you use a really expensive piece of machinery to make something that's kind of like pragmatic and practical, but not really mind-blowing. So I think that there's that sort of ratio to consider. If I'm using a big CNC machine, and it makes it into a video, it's probably going to be doing something that might be like public installation art, or something that other people can at least get the visual benefit of the outcome. But just watching them make like another, I don't know, like a skateboard for myself with a giant $1 million machine, that seems a little bit overkill unless that skateboard is like jet powered or really, really cool. But the main reason I don't use a 5-axis CNC that often is because it's a lot of work to use one of those machines. If you're going to create 3D toolpaths, so you have to 3D model things, you have to go through all the exporting process, and there's a lot of errors that can go wrong. Also, machines like that normally are being utilized pretty efficiently because they were so expensive. So it's not like it's just sitting there whenever it's ready for you to use it whenever you want. You have to sign up and do that. So it's a pretty dedicated process. So just because you have access to a big machine like that, it doesn't mean it makes making things that much easier. In many cases, it can complicate things quite a bit. I actually think that it's much easier just to carve something relatively simply with a chainsaw and an angle grinder than it is to 3D model, go through all the tool paths, and do that to CNC out something. Now, with regards to skipping projects because I didn't think they'd make a good video, I don't really know what that means, right? Like, it's not like I have this like list of projects. I'm like, oh, good video, not video, skip this. No, I get up, I think about my responsibilities and what I want to accomplish, and I plan a strategy of what I'm going to design and what I'm going to share that meets the most of those objectives. So this is still work. This is what I do. So I'm not separating, oh, I have projects I want to do, and that's at odds with my business model of producing content. It's not how I think. I'm always looking to combine the creative desire and my own intellectual interest with the business model so that when I work, I'm also having fun. So I don't think of these things separately. That's why I left the career in architecture, is because I don't want my passions and my interests to be separate from the way I make my income. And I think that part of creativity is figuring out a way to blend those two things together. And I think it's total crap when you hear somebody say, oh, well, I have a lot of creative ideas, but I just can't do them. Well, then they're not that creative. If you're creative, being creative is also figuring out how to implement the creative ideas. And for me, that's the fundamental distinction between design and illustrating. When I was teaching architecture, I'd always ask my students, what's the difference between a design of a thing and a drawing of the thing? And I would say that the design of the thing, it's already worked out. You figured out how to overcome the challenges. A drawing is something where you say, oh, here's what I think it should look like, but I don't really know how to make it or how to get it done because you haven't put into work. Last question. For designers who want to get into the business of monetizing content, what advice or resources can you recommend? Most industrial designers could create designs and videos, but few have the skill sets to make brand relations, build the right type of social media audience, etc. Are there places we can check out for more pinpointed resources? Well, I totally disagree with the premise of the question, although I think it's an important question to ask, so I do appreciate it being asked, I don't think the skill set to make brand relations, they're not these magical gangs of aliens. They're people that have a job to do. And what it is, it's not about being a designer saying, look at how creative this is, look at my ideas, look at my ideas. It's listening. In this case, if you want to make money through branded content, there's other ways to do it too, but this seems to be what they're getting at. If you want to make money with branded content, your job is to figure out what the brands want. Not say, here's what I want. Oh, they don't want to sponsor me. I don't have this skill set. No. You talk to them. You ask them and you go, you're normally not talking to the head of marketing on the first call. And you ask them, you go, what does your boss want from you? And what could I do to make your job easier and to create a win for you? And how can I help you get elevated within the company that you work for? That's exactly how I go about establishing brand relationships. It's not a special skill set. It's just being a considerate and listening human being and realizing that other people have challenges in their life, and if you want them to help you, it might make sense to create some wins for them. Now, building the right type of social media audience. I don't know exactly what that means, but I would say so many people come and say, oh, how do you build this audience? Or how do you respond to the YouTube algorithm or the Instagram algorithm to plan out your content? I don't. Anytime someone starts talking to me about algorithms, I always ask them, can you define an algorithm? And most of the time they can't. So don't worry about algorithms. Don't worry about the best social media practices. Worry about what you are good at. And if you don't know, then you should worry about how do I go about discovering what I'm good at. For me, that way has been experimenting and then sharing. So when I started this, I didn't know, I have a whole bunch of design ideas. I don't know which ones are going to do well on social media. So I don't ask other people, hey, how do I do this? And I don't sort of say, oh, this worked for other people, I'm going to copy their path. Because I don't know what their specific circumstances are. What I did was I said, here's an idea. I'm going to make it, I'm going to share it, and then I'm going to watch the results. Okay, learn something. Then I'm going to make something else, share it, watch the results. That's how you get in social media. You do things that you think are interesting, and then you learn whether or not the audience thinks that they're interesting, and then you keep doing it and keep evolving your techniques and design methodologies. That's all it is. Do interesting things. Start with the things that interest you, but then be open-minded enough to realize that you might be the weird person. And you might have to tone it down just a little bit or adjust it or bring in some other interests of other people. But building a social media audience is all about just connecting with people. And sometimes they like your ideas and sometimes they want something else. And it's up to you to decide with how much you are interested in evolving your ideas to meet their expectations, or how much you want to just keep hammering at your own ideas until you do things that accomplish both goals at once. Thanks for all the questions. I'm a big fan of Core 77 and all of its audience. Really appreciate the opportunity to do this. And if you have any more questions, hit me up on my Instagram channel. I'm pretty good at answering the direct messages there if there's any specific questions. And get out there, make some stuff, design some stuff, and be safe. Thanks.